Okay, perfect. Recording has started. So firstly, good evening, everybody. I hope everyone's well. I hope you have settled in your groups or made at least some sort of contact with a member in your group. Um, if you are absolutely alone and there is nobody else in your group, please let me know as well, so I can just put you in with another group. Just a reminder, well, it's not a reminder anymore because it now would officially be closed. I just hope everyone submitted their ICE task, which was actually due yesterday. But it obviously closed at 23:59, so that will be all 4 ICE tasks would have been due yesterday. You will be receiving results for that, I would say, in about a week's time. So I'm going to try and get through everything over this weekend and then have everything loaded on the system so you could see your results, etc. So I'm going to go through to start off. I'm going to just share my screen, which is sort of the agenda for today. Assignment 2, we're going to go through sort of the PACER. I'm going to go through some of the expectation in terms of the marking rubric. So exactly as we had done it for assignment 1, I'm going to go through assignment 2 the same way. And then thereafter, we're going to do learning unit 7, which is capacity planning. And then thereafter, we obviously have a learning unit per session. So next week will be learning unit 8, and then 9 will be a live session, and then 10 will be a recorded session. And hopefully the last session, we can go through some sort of national support session similarly to what we're doing now, but more so for your examination. If you do an opportunity to check your resources, there is I would like to say some sort of explanation on the way that the expectation should be when you answer questions for the examination. It is on your resource page. I tried downloading it. Unfortunately, I can't download that Word document. It's not allowing me to do so. But if you do have an opportunity, I can just send you the path and you could go in there and try and get a way to see it. Okay. So I'm sure everyone can see my screen. I'm gonna share the PACER, and obviously it's for you to look at your assignment question so we could go through it together. So in the beginning, so right at the top, the first page where the explanation is, point number 6 says that it is a group assignment. It should not exceed more than 4 members. I don't think any group is exceeding more than 4 members. But please, if you are alone and you want to join a group, please let me know. I can put you into a group. And number 2, you should have, and I did explain this, you should have one group leader, and that leader should be doing the submission. Based on that, you then give me all of your student names and numbers that's part of your specific group, and then I will capture the results for the group based on that. There is something that says that there's a peer evaluation component. I will share that with you hopefully by the end of this week. I do have one for last year, and I'm just waiting to hear from faculty whether I can use the same one for this year, because it is based on how much of effort each person is putting in within the group. If somebody is not at all you know, compiling any information, doing any research, or even or even showing any productivity within the group, you should be mentioning this. And obviously not just doing everything yourself and then allowing them to get the results. So yeah, please, I will share that by the end of the week, and then within that time, you should have more of an indication of where you're at with your specific group. Okay, so I'm going to start with question 1, which is conducting research using AI tools like ChatGPT, Bing AI, DeepSeek, Jasper, whatever that AI tool is, on the development of operations management and the role of customer expectation. in the design of goods and services. Based on your research, create an A4 size digital poster using PowerPoint, Canva, or any other design software that visually communicates your findings. Your poster should have a timeline of the evaluation of ops management. It should have the role and the significance of customer expectation in designing goods and services. Give examples that support your analysis and a well-organized layout with visual aids. So in this specific question, it's basically telling you you can use any way, mean, or form from an AI perspective to help you to understand where operations management started and thereafter the development of it. You need to use a lot of creativity. You need to be able to follow the different aspects that the question tells you to follow. So uh, for the 15 marks specifically, the 4-mark allocation is having a concise timeline, the overview of the evolution of operations management. So you need to obviously expand on that. For 6 marks, what is the role of your customer's expectation in designing of goods and services, as well as a few examples. And then the last one for 5 marks, it's basically how's it laid out? Visually, creativity, how is your charts looking? It needs to be as creative as possible. And I've seen some creativity from students. So please use whatever sort of tool, resources. Canva's a great method to use. It is a lot better when you're saving it as opposed to just using plain old PowerPoint. So try and get to Canva. You can use the free options on Canva. You don't have to have a premium services a login and having to pay for it, but it does help a lot. So I would say 100% go into that option, even if it is a free option. So the rubric is very well set out. And to be honest with you, there is not going to be any wrong answer in this question. To conceptualize operations management, to show the evolution of it, and to speak about the different, customers' expectations, etc. There's no right or wrong answer. What I want to see is that you understand the question. And number 2, you reference it accordingly. So there's a difference when you reference something from a textbook compared to when you reference something from AI. I'm not going to go into that detail. You need to understand how to do it from a library perspective. So I would say already start asking those questions on how best you can, because there's a few questions in this specific assignment that ask for AI intervention specifically. Okay. Then we're going to go into question 2, which is question 2 plus another thing. Question 1, it's from Learning Unit 1, and there's aspects of it that's sitting in Learning Unit 2. So go through both those criterias. Obviously, look at outside sources as well. The use of ChatGPT and AI tools is going to help you to find a lot more information as opposed to what's just in your textbook. Then we're going on to question 2.1, which is sitting in Learning Unit 3. And in this question, they're also telling you to use an AI-powered tool, and you need to generate the comparison of 2 different processes, 2 different process design strategies. So whether it's job shop, batch assembly, or a continuous flow. So choose 2 from those. That is used by various industries, various businesses in industries. Summarize the AI generated output in your own words. So it's basically telling you do not copy and paste because it's not going to work out for you. So you now need to summarize it in your own words in a 400-worded report and evaluate the relevance, the accuracy, and the quality of the AI's analysis. So discuss how you verify the information provided by AI and how applicable it is to real world companies. So my advice is ask AI the questions that's now depicted, meaning, choose your 2 different job processes, whether it's a continuous flow or a job shop. Ask AI to give you the comparison of it. And then you do your own research outside of AI, and then you now need to verify that information. So basically what the question is saying is, you need to verify whether the information you're getting from AI is correct or not. And that's how you need to basically do your report, but it needs to be centered around the process design strategy specifically. This is for 10 marks, and how the marking will basically be determined, very important, so please take note. You need to basically do the actual comparison. So whichever one you choose, you need to highlight what's the differences, the similarities, the advantages, the disadvantages, what makes it stand out from the other. Then you need to also summarize it in your own words. So you obviously get marks from that perspective. You need to evaluate the AI. So the last part of the question, what is the accuracy, the relevance, the quality of it, with clear reasoning. So whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, but what is your reason for? You need to verify the information. So show how you verified the information, whether you did cross-referencing sources in textbooks, in Google Scholar, you checked, the factual accuracy of it using different websites, whatever the case may be. So what is that verification? And then what is the applicability to real world companies? So that's also the last part of the question. So you now need to bring in a discussion on whether it is applicable to businesses that we see in the real world. And you need to support it by using examples, support it by using any sort of practicality that you sort of see. Okay, then we have question 2.2, which basically sits in learning unit 3. And this is also an AI powered tool question where you need to review and improve your report's grammar, structure, and readability. Submit both the original version and the AI enhanced version, noting key areas where AI suggested improvement and reflect on whether you agree or disagree with the relevant changes. So this is in reference to question 2.1 specifically, all right? So whatever you did in 2.1, you now need to submit both versions. So your original version and your AI version. Then you need to identify sort of key areas where AI suggested any sort of improvement, okay? So whether it was a grammar, structure, readability, whatever it is, and then you now need to reflect on what AI suggested for you to do in terms of any improvement. So you need to now understand whether you agree with the improvement, you disagree with the improvement, and what is the reasoning thereafter. And then just your overall presentation, whether your revised version has improvement in grammar, in structure, and how it reads, etc. So that question is for 5 marks. So a bulk of the question is obviously sitting, or bulk of the marks obviously sitting in 2.1. And then in 2.2, it's sort of realizing what the original was compared to the AI and doing a more of a comparison there. Okay, I know it's very different to a normal assignment, but from a faculty curriculum perspective, because everything is so AI driven, it's just to bring sort of, how can I say, a roundabout approach to students for them to understand exactly how AI works and the difference between AI and original work as well. Okay. Then we're going to go on to question number 3. And this is sitting in Learning Unit 6. And there's a whole case study here. So this case study is for ABC Electronics, and a lot of it is centered around material requirements planning, so MRP, okay? And the questions thereof is obviously situated around MRP. So question 3.1 is defining material requirements planning and explain the purpose in inventory management specifically. So for 5 marks, you want to do a theory version of where you're at with MRP. And we had gone through MRP in our previous session, spent some time there. But you need to sort of bring it in tune with where inventory sits with it. MRP and in relation to inventory. So the first part of the question, understanding what MRP is, explaining, defining, etc. And then the second part of the question, I would say for about 2 or 3 marks, understand where inventory sort of sits when we're looking at MRP. And I keep saying the same thing. When you have too much of inventory and too much of stock, you have cash and money sitting in that stock. So I think that's the best tip I could give you for that question. In question 3.2, it's also sitting in Learning Unit 6. And it says, using the scenario, which is ABC, identify 2 ethical concerns that Jane faces in her role as a production manager. Discuss how these concerns could impact both ABC Electronics as well as its suppliers, right? So you need to find 2 ethical dilemmas. I'm not going to go through what I think the ethical dilemmas are, but for 10 marks, each ethical dilemma will now carry 5 marks each. Understand that you need to first identify what that dilemma is, explain that dilemma, use it in conjunction with the case study in terms of an application, and possibly provide an example. So that's where your 5 marks will be built up from. Okay. Then the last one in question 3 will be 3.3. Propose 2 strategies that ABC Electronics could adopt to ensure ethical practices within its supply chain while still maintaining cost efficiency. Provide a justification for each scenario. So you need to build so this is also sitting in Learning Unit 6, and you need to build a scenario, okay? And your scenario is going to be built from what you sort of look at from an ethical perspective, and you need to build a strategy based on that. This is also for 10 marks, and each strategy will also carry 5 marks each. Very similarly, you're going to first identify what that strategy is, explain it in terms of ABC, and then provide an example. Okay. Then we're moving on to question 4.1. Okay, which is another case study, which is Optimal Manufacturing Limited, who is a mid-sized producer of automotive components for various vehicle manufacturers around the country. And here it is your big case study worth 30 marks. So it says, based on the case study of optimal manufacturing, critically assess how the company can optimize its capacity planning to better align with the demand fluctuations. In your essay, discuss the factors that influence capacity planning and the strategies the company can adopt to manage capacity constraints effectively. So today we're going to go over capacity planning. But what I'm going to explain to you is not necessarily in your textbook. So use your textbook, but use what I'm telling you to build on what's in your textbook, okay? Purely because I don't believe in just spewing out everything that's in the textbook. I need to bring in real life examples as much as possible so you understand the concepts as well and explain it in layman's terms, because sometimes the textbook can be a little bit difficult to read and understand. So here for 30 marks, they're obviously breaking it down into a rubric. For 5 marks, it's a structure and the clarity of writing. Make sure that you have a body, an intro, a body, and a conclusion, because that's what builds your structure. When we're talking academic tone and clear writing, it means that you are speaking how I need you to speak. Okay, you're speaking on efficiency, you're speaking on effectiveness, you're speaking about the supply chain of the business. When you're speaking capacity, what is the restraints? What is the prevalent cost that's involved? So you're speaking the correct terminology. That's what I'm looking for. When we're looking at content, and this is for 20 marks, you need to understand the factors that influences capacity in the specific business, right? And when we're looking at the factors, you want to probably look at, for 20 marks, maybe about, I would say about, give or take, maybe 2 or 3 factors, and then explaining this in detail. What are those factors? What role does it play in the business? How does it now apply to that specific company? And then your strategies to manage capacity constraints, whether it's a lean manufacturing, whether it's what capacity planning you've been doing, whatever the case may be, also probably having two or three of those capacity constraints listed. And then basically it's the overall argument, which is also for 5 marks. Do you have flow in your essay? Are you quite detailed in terms of what your answer is? Are you able to build good ideas based on, what you've suggested in terms of is your solution or is your strategies of how you're going to manage it, etc. And also you've got multiple sources. You're not just looking at this textbook. You are looking at various different sources that's going to help you to build your knowledge and credibility of how you're going to answer this question. Okay. And then we have question 5, which is for 15 marks. And the question below is a reflection type of question. So describe how your understanding of ops management has evolved since the module. So basically these 15 marks is marks that you can gain very, very easily if you just answer the best way you possibly can. So out of the 15 marks, each one, I would say you're probably looking at about 3 marks each. So answer it in that respect. Your evolution, you want to understand how, what's your understanding of operations management, how it's developed over the module, what have you taken from it, what examples or concepts have you learned, etc. Then we're going to go into the significance of forecasting, explaining what forecasting is and how is it important to from an ops management perspective. How does it relate to maybe the fourth industrial revolution specifically? What is your examples? So I would probably go into something like that. What are the different challenges in inventory management? So identifying any challenges that you have, especially from when you're applying those inventory management principles in real businesses, you know, you need to identify what those challenges are and also give some sort of examples. And you can find this in case studies, business case studies specifically. And then integration of MRP, understanding how MRP can best, sort of optimize your business and make it better from an efficiency perspective or an inventory control perspective. You can sort of provide some examples there. And then the last one is capacity planning, understanding what's your reflection. Okay, so meaning your opinion on importance of capacity planning and how it influences decision making. And then you need to support this by using examples. So in this question specifically in 5.1, I do want you to reference, but when you are reflecting, a lot of it becomes your own opinions, right? But you have to support it by examples. So I expect that your examples should have references, and then your opinions, obviously, I mean, you can't reference that. But there will be a mix of two. And if there's no referencing at all, then, there's obviously going to be a minor referencing error. So I would suggest that you always do a bit of both and make sure that you are referencing at the end of the day. Okay. Is there any questions about this specifically, the assignment 2? Okay, I take it as though there is no questions. Okay, I think obviously the two main things for me is, and where students lose marks unnecessarily, is submitting late. So please do not submit late. Make sure that you are submitting on time. And number 2 is referencing, whether it is an in-text referencing or an in-text referencing, make sure both is done. As much as Turnitin will give you a percentage, let's say it's 10%. If I go into your document and you don't have any in-text referencing, I automatically do take out, penalize you from a minor referencing perspective, which can be anything from 5 to 15 marks. So you definitely cannot afford to lose those type of marks. Okay. If there's no other questions, I think we can actually move on to our learning unit. I'm sorry, I know today is going to be a bit of a brain. Okay, you've got a question.
Sorry,
Yes.
you. How are you, ma'am?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. My question is for question two, right? So for 2.1, it does say that we have to use AI, ne?
Mm,
But what I'm confused with is when it comes to 2.2, right? They
mm.
do allow us to like use AI and then like what I'm trying to understand is and then from what AI gave us and then we should add our own to just compare and also verify, right? So, with what AI gave us from 2.1, are we supposed to also put the answer that AI gave us in 2.1 and also in 2.2, or we only give we put in the answer that AI gave us in 2.2 only?
Okay, so basically what you're going to do is AI is going to give you an answer for question 2.1, right? You then need to basically do a 400-word report in your own words. So your own report, not AI generated report, but in your own report. Then you obviously need to go through the relevance, the accuracy, to build up your 10 marks. You need to go through that. In question 2, you are basically going to submit your 2.1 original version on the 400-word report that you had done. And then you need to get an AI enhanced version of that report. So what you would then do is whatever you submitted in 2.1 as your original work, you need to copy and paste that into AI. AI will then give you an AI enhanced version. And then that's when you need to tell us whether there's been improvements. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it, with the relevant changes? Do you
Okay, I
do you get
understand now. Yes,
it? Okay, you understand. So I mean,
yes.
it you could very easily combine question one and question two, to be honest, or 2.1 and 2.2. And you could have just made it 15 marks. I know that the question is very confusing, and that's why we need this type of session, because it's going to only help us when we, better explain it. I had a very similar question with a very similar sort of structure in another module, and it's exactly as it is. So AI first, right, to give you the information when you're going to ask. You're going to do your own report, which we're going to call your original report. And in question 2.2, you're going to submit your original report and get an AI report, and then look at the difference between the two. Okay. I hope I
Okay.
explained it properly, at least.
Yes, you did. You did. Thank you,
Okay.
ma'am.
Sure. No problem. Okay. So let's go into capacity planning. Okay. I want to try and do the entire learning unit today. I know I've got high hopes for it, but I think it's tough if I can explain it from a high level perspective. Because capacity planning is very easy to understand from a theoretical perspective. So I have no doubt that you won't have a problem doing question 4.1, which is your essay question, which is completely related to capacity, because that 20 marks, the bulk of where it's coming from, that's exactly in your textbook. So you will fully be able to understand it. Okay. So, firstly, we're going to talk about capacity. All right. And what is capacity? So, sort of textbook version of capacity, it basically means when you reach the maximum amount of something that something can contain or something can produce. It's when you basically say you've reached the maximum that you can do. So I put an example, and my spelling, I'm so sorry about that. But let's say, for instance, we're using Fly Sapphire, right? When an employee or a customer of an airline likes Fly Sapphire, here's the organization using the term seating capacity. It basically means it's the limit in which the number of people that can be safely fitted into an aircraft. Okay, so it's the maximum amount of people that can safely fit in an aircraft. And I think that's the best way that we can basically explain it. When we're looking at it from an operations management perspective, capacity basically determines how much of work a company or a business can handle within a specific time period. So I work in logistics. Okay. I push out 75 parcels a month. I have 52 drivers that basically push out those deliveries. I then need to understand what is the capacity of my drivers. If a driver's capacity means that he can take out a maximum of 60 deliveries per day, that is his maximum that he can do. That is, he's reached his capacity. In order for me to fulfill that additional volume that is in excess, I need to increase my workforce. When I increase my workforce, I can then push other labels or shipments to the additional workforce so that nobody is over capacity. Okay. So that's basically capacity. I mean, we all use the word in that word in every day, and I think when you're now relating to business, you sort of think very much more differently. Okay, then we move on to the importance of capacity. So capacity is very important because it sets the um, limit of your performance specifically, because it directly impacts whether you are productive in your business or whether you have, enough profitability in your business, and also from a customer satisfaction perspective. So there's some of the terms listed below, which I'll quickly go through, and it's understanding the maximizing productivity and efficiency. And it's just basically understanding that you are using the most optimal use of your resources, whether your resources is labor in terms of people, or it's machinery and equipment, or it's just time. A lot of businesses go into what we call um, a gamble walk, all right? Where you understand where Six Sigma sits. Like if you have a big operations floor, then you can understand from that perspective where everybody sits and how much time or how many steps it takes for somebody to be efficient in that business. So there's various ways that you can work out how efficiency would work, especially from a capacity perspective. Then we're going into meeting demand and managing growth. So capacity basically must match your customer's demand so that you don't have wastage in your business. So you don't want any shortages in your business as well. So you need to be able to meet the demand of your customer at all times. Effective resource allocation. Um, and this is more from a when you have labor and you have materials like raw materials in a production process, or you have machinery, it sort of allows you to understand or guides you to understand how each thing is now being distributed. So if you have X that you now need to produce, what is it that how much of labor do you need, how much of materials, how much of machinery, tool time that you require in order for you to reach your capacity level. Okay, then you have ensuring quality and sustainability. And in this perspective, you just don't want to overload any of your systems that will now cause you to reduce your quality at the end of the day. Risk management, you want to prevent as much losses as possible. You don't want to go under capacity, nor do you want to go over capacity. So you want to keep it at an equilibrium so that your risk is minimized as much as possible. Then it's innovation and flexibility. So sort of allowing for any adaptation, allowing your business to be as agile as possible so that if there is any changes in the market, you're able to adapt to those changes. And then lastly, it's personal well-being so that you have a capacity level in place, right, in a business or an organization, so that it prevents any sort of burnouts to happen. You want to be able to manage the workflow as effectively as possible. There's no way that each person has a capacity level. Like in business, an employee works what I think it's 189 hours a month. Anything more than that, they get paid overtime, for instance. You still can't allow an employee to go over a 40-hour overtime as per labor law in South Africa. So this is how you know that you've reached your capacity. You also want to prevent burnout. So there's no way that somebody can finish their shift at midnight and then start again at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning. It's impossible. So best way, this is the reason why we have capacity levels in place so that we can avoid instances like this. Okay. Then we got implementation of capacity. And just that is ever so okay. So implementation of capacity. When we're talking implementation of capacity, capacity is basically you put it into practice through planning, through having different operational strategies that align with what resources you have, as well as it's aligned with what your customer demand is. So when we're looking at, let's say, capacity planning, for instance, you want to understand how much of capacity is required in order for you to reach your demand. So you need to understand from every element, whether it's a raw material perspective, a labor perspective, or a machinery and equipment perspective, how much of that capacity with those elements is required in order for you to meet a demand of your customer. If they place an order for 5,000 units, how do you need to space out your capacity with your resources? Then it's capacity building, and it's basically developing your labor or your employee skills so that you can get a better output out of them. So how best can you build them up so you can get a better efficiency, better effectiveness that can affect your productivity positively, can affect your profitability positively. So there's a lot of various elements there. Then it's looking at operational capacity management, which is basically making sure from an operational perspective that you're monitoring the performance through different KPIs so that you get the efficiency that you need. If you have different job cards in production, for instance, you now need to set up a KPI target for each job card so you're not lacking in terms of quality, and then that KPI needs to be measured, and then process improvements then need to happen. Then you need to set your capacity limit. So what is your threshold where you don't go into an overloading space, you don't burn out your staff, you don't exhaust your resources, you don't damage your machinery and tools? What is your limit from a capacity perspective? Then you have automation so that you can increase capacity. Um, and in this case, you want to use technology as much as possible so that you can boost the productivity. So, you're focusing more on automation and tech than you are focusing on the human element. Scenario planning, and you want to build for sort of prepare yourself for whether there's any changes in demand. Maybe there's a seasonality like festive season coming up, or it's a Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, whatever it is. What is your scenario planning? That's how you're going to implement some of your capacity processes. And then balancing capacity and demand, it's how do you match the supply with your customers' needs and your customers' demand. So you want to create some sort of equilibrium. And then the last one is delegation. You want to distribute tasks as much as possible to make sure that an individual employee, for instance, has optimization that builds up the optimization of the team and the department and then the business at the end of the day. If you're using one person to full burnout level and capacity, unfortunately, that's not really going to work. So it needs to obviously be split around. Okay. Then we have critical capacity decisions. And critical capacity decisions are basically anything from a strategic decision perspective, and about how much of capacity is needed now and how much of capacity is needed in the future, so different time frames, and making sure that they're meeting all the demands, right? And still having the productivity, still having the profitability, etc. But these decisions basically determine how much of capacity is required within a business, right? So the first one is an optimal capacity level. And this is where you're finding the most efficient level of output, meaning how much do you need to produce and what is that optimal level that you need to be at. So if it is 2000 units, then you now work backwards from 2000 units, meaning how much of raw materials, how much of labor time, how much of machine time you require. But this is your optimal capacity level that you now need to be at so that you're at efficiency. Um, and then you obviously will have a greater capacity level, more than optimal. So you're going into more of a profitability space. The next one is short versus long term. So your short term decisions basically is making any sort of adjustments to your plan or your capacity decisions, whereas your long term is how can you better expand? How can you reduce? If your business is not doing well, you're going into a reduction space. If your business is doing well, you're going into an expansion space. But it's how best you can look at it from a long term perspective, of building your capacity or reducing your capacity level or limitations. Then we have capacity, or balancing your capacity basically. And here we want to look at whether it's understanding whether your system can adjust to your changing demand levels. You need to also bring in a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of scalability into that specific topic so that you have a good balance in where you can adjust and change your demand levels as and when you can. So either scale it up or scale it down, or you can just have a very flexible and adjustable capacity plan specifically. Then capacity expansion goes into increasing facilities, increasing locations, equipment, any sort of labor, anything where you can meet a future demand, how best you can expand that capacity that you have to take you up into a profitability level. And then the last one is location capacity. It's choosing the best location that can support the best operations, so the most efficient operations specifically. Okay. And that's basically your capacity decisions. Then we have capacity management. And capacity management specifically is the ongoing process of planning or managing or optimizing capacity to meet your specific business goals. Okay, whether it is a current demand or a future demand, you want to keep efficiency at the forefront of everything. So listen to keywords as we go along the lecture. When we're speaking on capacity, you're speaking on efficiency, productivity, profitability, expansion, scalability, flexibility, adjustability, agile, balancing, planning. These are all different sort of words that just tie in your essays and tie in your points together so that you know what you're speaking about at the end of the day. Okay, so when we're looking at capacity management, we want to look at an effective capacity, and this is where you get an output, so a finished product that is achievable, um, considering you've got maintenance, considering you've got downtime, etc. So taking into account all the different variabilities, you're still at an effective capacity. Actual capacity is your real output that you have achieved, meaning the actual production that you have done or the actual capacity of inventory that you have achieved. Output capacity is the total goods or services that you would produce. And then input capacity is the total number of resources that you've used, whether it's staff, machines, raw materials, anything that is from a resource perspective that's available to produce your output. Okay. Which is very simple, it's very easy. Capacity management is um, something that can easily be explained. Okay. Then we go into strategy formulation, right? And when we're talking about strategy formulation, basically your capacity planning, it needs to align with your specific business's vision, their mission, their strategy, so that there is a long-term success at the end of the day. A lot of the strategy formulation itself for a business involves you forecasting what the demand is going to be, understanding or predicting what the capacity needs is going to be for that specific organization, and then integrating them into your business goals. So if you know you can produce 5 million outputs in a year, and 5 million outputs is going to generate 100 million, your goal can be you're going to be 100 million rand business by the end of 2025. So everything now needs to align and speak the same language, basically. And a lot of it, strategy formulation then works hand in hand with how capacity planning needs to align with that. Then we have capacity prediction. So when we're talking about capacity planning, it should always have a long-term and a short-term factor or different influences that you need to take into account, whether it is market trends or seasonalities or technology. It basically helps businesses to prevent any sort of underutilization or spending too much of money, okay, maybe going into an overinvestment. So you need to consider all factors, long and short term, in order for you to decide whether there is going to be any sort of expansion in terms of capacity required. And you're not going to make the wrong decision by choosing something that's too small or too big. And then the last one there is constraint management, right? Um, and this falls under the theory of constraints in understanding that it identifies any sort of bottlenecks that you have in your business that limits your performance or your productivity, and systematically you want to improve them using 5 different steps. Number one is you need to identify what that constraint is. Number two, you need to exploit it, meaning that you need to use it as efficiently as you possibly can. Number three, you need to subordinate it. And you need to subordinate basically other processes that support it. You need to elevate, meaning you need to increase the capacity or elevate your constraint. And then the last one is repeat, meaning you need to run the process over and over again continuously in order for you to see that there has been some sort of management of a constraint. Okay. And then the last one is, we actually went through this pretty quickly. It's asking yourself different questions when it comes to having an alternative capacity plan. So when you are making capacity plans, businesses in different industries should always assess the feasibility from an economy perspective, and also whether it's suitable operationally. So you need to understand which option is most sort of cost effective or most economical and most realistic. You need to understand what the cost is going to be, what the lead time is going to be, and does it fit your current operations and your current strategy? So this is the questions that you basically need to ask when you're going down this road. Um, and that basically summarizes capacity planning in a nutshell. As I mentioned at the beginning of before we started, capacity planning, it is very easy to understand it. The textbook explains it really well. I just wanted to bring in a different approach where I could explain it in a simpler and a little bit easier way. But please, especially question 4.1, a lot of this is linked to that. So please make sure you're going through the textbook on capacity planning to look at different examples, different case studies when you are answering question 4.1. Okay. Is there any questions? No questions. Okay. Then I take it as though everyone is more or less understanding. I am here, so if you need anything at all, I will probably not reply on the group, but I will reply to you privately, as some of you would have seen, especially when it came to group members, etc. But if it is a class question, 100% I will respond. But yeah, all the best with your assignment, guys. I am here if you need me or need any clarity on anything. I'm here to help. Okay. Have a great day. Bye.